Welcome to another episode of Euphoric the Podcast, and I'm so excited about today's episode because we get to talk about my favorite topic. If I'm not talking about entrepreneurship or alcohol-free living, it's travel. I could talk to you about travel all day, every day, because it's just such an important value of mine. I love to see the world. I love to experience new cultures. I love to meet new people. I love to try all the food. I love to swim in new waters. Culture is my lifeblood. Traveling is everything to me. And I travel quite a lot. So today I'm going to give you the 12 travel hacks that I swear by as a non-drinker. Now, some of these are going to be incredible travel hacks no matter what, but especially also if you don't drink, they're going to be super, super helpful. Starting with number 1 is to learn how to ask for a non-alcoholic beverage in the local language. Now, this is going to be more important in certain countries than others. So for example, I found in Southeast Asia or in Costa Rica, they just have such an abundance of non-alcoholic beverages in general, like juices and acai and all these just different things that it doesn't maybe matter as much. But I do find that places in Europe, for example, or in South America or Mexico, you do want to perhaps be able to ask for a beer without alcohol or for a mocktail or something like that. And so learning how to say the words, I think, are really important, but also to be able to know when you go to the grocery store. So if you're in a grocery store or a fast food or convenience place, that you can actually ascertain what the drinks are without alcohol if it's like a non-alcoholic beer or something like that. So for example, like in French, it's sans alcool that you would look for beer or wine, especially in France. They have so much alcohol-free wine in stores. Not as much in restaurants yet, but definitely in stores. Almost every store has, wine that has had the alcohol removed in it. And then a lot of times on menus, you won't really see, the drinks and everything they have. So I've been in many places where I've asked for a beer without alcohol and they for sure have it. Europe is really accommodating for things like that, but it wasn't necessarily on the menu. So it's really good to know the words in the local language. Like in Polish, you would say, piwo bez alkoholu, for example. And so this is just like a little tidbit that I do. I would look up what the, expression is in the local language, whether I'm going to ask for it for a waiter or, a bar staff, or whether I'm at a grocery store and just looking for something like that. I think it's also cool to recognize what your favorite drinks are. Maybe you're not into the non-alcoholic drinks like alcohol-free beers or wines or mocktails, but it's really cool to also explore the grocery stores and see what they have available. I'm really into mineral water these days, so for me, that's like all that suffices as just a lot of sparkly water. Not like La Croix and stuff like that, but like real mineral water from mountains and spring waters and stuff like that. So that's one of my favorite things to buy in stores, but I've been alcohol-free for years now, and I've had so many different phases where I was really into, this kind of alcohol-free drink or this type of mocktail and stuff. And it's really fun to go into stores in a different country and be able to find like what kind of selections they have about this. Because sometimes it's alcohol-free drinks in the sense of like, oh, it's a non-alcoholic wine or beer or something. Or sometimes it's just the drink that they have there that just doesn't happen to have alcohol in it and might be something that you might like and stuff like that. So I found a lot of really, really cool alternatives for that. So that's my first tip for you, is to learn how to ask for a drink without alcohol in the local language, and also so that you can read it when you're in grocery stores. My second tip for you is really on how to make travel much more enjoyable and much more easy on you and much more affordable. So I have a lot of tips here. So the second one is learning how to use your credit card rewards to be able to maximize the most incredibly affordable trips possible. Now, I'm not a points geek. My brother is, for sure. He could write a blog and be one of those people who just share all the tidbits on how to amass as many points as possible and how to maximize them and stuff like that. I don't go that far. However, I have figured out my credit cards and my life in a way that we do try to get as many points as possible and then buy our travel through points. And so what happens is that a lot of times I have like a flight and I won't have to actually pay for it. It doesn't feel like painful to me because like the points took care of it. And so a lot of people get really confused about points because a lot of airlines, what you do is if you don't have enough points, you won't be able to buy the actual ticket. So let's say a flight somewhere is 50,000 points and you only have 30,000 points. A lot of places you can't actually buy the ticket with the points. So then the points just get wasted and they're sitting around in an account and you have to buy it with cash anyway. Now, I promise you, nobody paid me to say this, but I really love the Capital One Venture X card, because the Capital One Venture X card actually gets you so many points, but you don't have to have as many points as it takes to buy the flight. say the flight is 50,000 points, you could buy it on just 30,000 points and then pay the rest in cash. Now, the thing with that, my brother says, is that you're not getting the best like point equivalent balance for it or something like that. You're not necessarily getting the best deals for it, but I don't care. Like, I want my points to actually matter for something than necessarily having to wait to reach this huge milestone that I won't be able to get and having those things expire eventually, than actually getting to use them. And I just find that this system enables me to use them. Now, so what I do is not only do I have a personal credit card that gets me points, but my business credit card gets me points as well. And so this is what's so cool, is that as my business has just natural expenses on team and coaching and mentorship and ads and marketing and all that kind of stuff, all of that is funding my travel budget. So me and my husband went to the Maldives earlier this year. I barely paid for those plane tickets. Points basically took care of it. I barely paid for my Europe tickets. I'm going to South Africa later this year. Like, I'm going to have enough points for that too. So it just makes it so much easier to have a system figured out where all of your expenses are actually adding up to give you incredible vacations and incredible trips. And that way, you know, maybe you still have to pay for a hotel and food and stuff like that, but if the flight's covered, like, wouldn't you feel so much better to actually get up and go and be able to use that? So again, I think if you're not going to be a super savvy, you know, crazy points geek, I love the Capital One Adventure X card for this. And what's cool about what they have too, and again, nobody paid me to say this, I'm not affiliated with Capital One, is they have something called a purchase eraser. So the purchase eraser you can use on things that you can't buy with points. So for example, on Airbnb, you can't use points, or on VRBO, or just some other websites, you can't actually use points to buy something. So what the purchase eraser does is it allows you to still be able to apply the points that you have towards those purchases by buying it first and then erasing it basically as an expense from your credit card balance, which is really, really cool. So I just think that these kinds of, you know, ways and systems, and obviously you might know of better credit cards, and feel free to DM me if you have some really cool examples, but I think really learning how to use your credit cards and your points to maximize rewards is super smart. And especially if you have a business, your business should have a credit card that gives you travel rewards too. I mean, imagine these businesses that have just like millions of dollars of expenses on their credit cards each month. Like, how many points they would never, ever, ever have to pay for travel ever again. You know what I mean? It's just super fun. Another thing, point number 3, a travel hack that I live by, that I've had for, you know, probably 7 or 8 years now, is global entry. So global entry is a program that the government gives in the United States where you get vetted as a traveler. And once you're vetted as a traveler, you do not have to go through all the massive lines that everyone else does. So it is usually like $100 application, and once you apply to be, you know, approved by global entry, it lasts 5 years. So essentially you're only paying $20 a year to be part of global entry. And the application process maybe is a little annoying. You have to apply and then interview, and most people get like stuck up on the interview. But a lot of times you can actually do the interview when you're coming back from overseas at the airport. So you might be able to figure out how to do that. But why I love global entry is anytime we're coming back from overseas, from Europe or from another country, I don't get stuck in those huge immigration lines. I don't get stuck in, you know, waiting for those kiosks to go as Border Patrol is going through your passport. Global entry is so fast and easy. You just go through it really quickly. They scan your face. They don't even look at your passport, and you're in. They don't ask you a ton of questions about where you've been and if you carried anything with you and all that kind of stuff. You get back into the United States so much faster. I swear by it. I love it. And the thing is that global entry comes with more perks than just that. So my 4th tip for you is TSA PreCheck. So this one you might be more familiar with because you've seen TSA before and the PreCheck option. And this is where people get to just glide through the security much faster in a shorter line. They don't have to take off their shoes. They don't have to take their laptops out of their, you know, backpack and whatever, and they get through faster. Now here's the thing, is that when you get global entry, you can actually get TSA PreCheck for free with it. So instead of getting TSA PreCheck one time and then trying to apply for global entry, I would do it the other way around. I would get your global entry so that you get TSA PreCheck for free. Because basically by having the global entry status, you're already telling the government that you are a secure traveler, that they don't need to worry about you. They vetted you. Obviously you have to pass some background checks. I don't think you can be a felon to get it. And then you will have the TSA PreCheck. You don't have to take off your shoes, although I just heard that the United States isn't doing that anymore. but you don't have to take off your sweater, you don't have to take your laptop out, and the lines are so much shorter. And so then all you do is you put in your global entry number when you're booking a flight, and that's what gets the boarding pass to have that beautiful TSA pre-check sign on it, and you can skip the line and get so much further ahead. So that's my tip number 4. Tip number 5. Now this goes back to being a non-drinker. If you are new to this lifestyle, there's so much about traveling and vacations that revolves around alcohol. There are all the different trips you could do for wine country. There's brewery visits, there's partying, there's clubbing, there's just drinking on a patio, watching the sunset. Obviously drinking and traveling are really intertwined. And I have a ton of podcast episodes about how to travel and have incredible trips and vacations without alcohol. And it really comes with a mindset reframe, but it's also thinking about what you're signing up for. I love all the things that you can do as a non-drinker. I think that there's so much more to do. And in my book, Euphoric, I shared a really poignant example of meeting this woman in Hawaii who was basically drinking all day at the beach, and just thinking to myself how much of trip she's having, how much of vacation experience she's having. She's day drinking at the beach. All she's going to do that night is either pass out or drink more. The next day she's going to be hungover. She barely did anything other than just sit around at the beach. Whereas a non-drinker is going to go snorkeling, a non-drinker is going to go hiking, a non-drinker is going to explore the island. They're going to do so much stuff. And I just really think of it that way. Drinking is just one activity we have on this planet Earth. And when you don't drink, you're actually able to enjoy and appreciate the 999,000 other things that you can do on this planet that are so much more enriching and so much more fulfilling. So when it comes to travel, really think of what you can fit in instead of what you're not, what you're missing out on perhaps, which you're really not missing out on. Really think about what you're catering your trip and your vacation to. So something that I really love doing is looking out for wellness travel. And, it's especially so motivating to just recognize that you can go on a trip and take care of your body, mind, and soul and not feel like crap when you get home. There's so many trips I've had where I literally felt so crappy when I got home because I drank too much on the trip. And it just feels like I never got a break and I never actually got the vacation. So now I'm really on the search for things that enliven me, that excite me, that make me feel taken care of and nourished, whether it's a wellness trip or an ecotourism trip or an adventure trip. And so start looking at how you can inject more things like that into your trips and vacations. For example, I always loved to sauna. Sauna culture is so cool to me, to just think that you can get in this hot box and sweat and it's so good for you to detox and stuff like that. And then be able to jump into a cold shower or cold pool. I love doing that so much. That's such an entertaining evening for me. Compared to going out and drinking, I'd so much rather go to the sauna all night. And so maybe I cater my trip to actually hotels that have saunas like that I can use, or spas and stuff like that. And it just becomes so much more juicy and so much more fun. I also love to swim and I love to hike. I don't always love to hike uphill, but I do love to be in nature. And so getting out there, and for me, the beach is amazing. A lot of people say they don't like the beach because they don't like to sit around. I don't sit around. I'm swimming a lot. And when I am sitting, I'm reading. So I just really love reading and I love swimming. So to me, it's perfect. I love being in the sun. But I swim a lot and I challenge myself by swimming in an ocean where you don't know what kind of creatures are in there and you don't know what kind of waves are going to be around. And you just push yourself to the limits. And that can be really, really fun for me. Same thing with hiking. I just went up hiking off of the tallest mountain in a country. And it was so thrilling. It was so hard because it was hiking uphill and it was very high, but I was so proud of myself when I got to the top and then back again. And so those are the kind of trips that I love to do now. And even when it's not about alcohol and all the kind of things that go into that, you can really start to focus on what you do want to inject into the trip. So my next tip for you is back to the airport is getting lounge access. Now, this is again one of those things that just makes travel feel so much more luxurious, so much more pampering, is to actually have the ability to get into a lounge with the free food before you get on a plane. Why I love this is they have better Wi-Fi, they have better seating. I remember growing up, anytime I went to the airport, there was always enough seating for everybody, and now it seems like they've make the little seating areas so much smaller so that it just feels like if you actually get a seat in the seating area by your gate, you're one of the lucky ones. Most people are standing around because there's not enough room, and especially since there's always an empty seat in between other people, and stuff like that, and they're hard and uncomfortable. I would so much rather be at the lounge. And they do have free food too. Some lounges have better food than others, especially in Europe and in other countries. I don't know why. The US doesn't do lounges that great. A lot of times they just have like pretzels. But it is really cool, I think, to have some snacks. And if you do need to, have a sustenance meal and you don't want the Burger King or the pizza that's out there in the food court, a lounge will probably have some better options for you. They have much better Wi-Fi. And it's just a vibe. It's just like, oh, I'm in the lounge. I'm not with the poor common people. I get to be in the lounge. And so how do you get lounge access? One of the coolest and easiest ways is to do priority pass. And so this is another cool benefit that you can get with your credit cards. A lot of credit cards offer it. And the one that I mentioned earlier, the Venture X rewards, do offer it, where it's just given to you as a bonus. You don't have to pay extra for it. And so this is something that I have. We have the priority pass, which really works so good in other countries. Almost every lounge in any airport in a foreign country will allow you in with the priority pass. Maybe. Don't quote me on that. But in the US, some of them do, some of them don't. So sometimes it might be cool to look for another credit card that gives you access to that lounge at your home airport if the priority pass doesn't work. That's what we're trying to figure out with LA right now. They used to have a priority pass lounge and now they just got rid of it, which kind of sucks, but probably going to figure something else out there. But it's just, to me, such a vibe. It makes traveling so much easier. You feel so pampered. It just, it almost like, I get to the airport really early. I'm one of those type of people who is not going to be late on the airport on a day that I'm flying. That's like the last thing I'd want to do is ever miss a flight. So I always do either 2 hours early or 3 hours early if I'm flying like a big transatlantic flight internationally. And I don't mind catching up on work and DMs and emails and little projects before I go. It actually makes me feel better, especially when I've been packing all day and just running around at the house. I can get to the airport and then just relax a little bit before the flight, go to the bathroom a few times, eat a little bit, fill up my water bottle. All that kind of stuff is so much nicer to do in a lounge. So I do love the priority pass. It's included in many credit cards, so be sure to check that out. It's not like some huge membership you have to pay every year. It's just a free perk when you just use the credit cards in a good way. Okay. My next tip is controversial. So tip number 7, you guys don't come for me with the pitchforks, but I wear a mask on a plane. Now, I know that to some people is just crazy and there's so many wars between, masking and not masking. I don't want to get into it. But the thing is I have been traveling for a long time. I've been traveling internationally, especially overseas, like over, cross oceans and stuff, ever since I was in high school. And I have so many examples from before COVID where I would get on a plane and I would arrive at my destination and then 2 days later I'd be sick. And I knew that I got sick on the plane. I knew it, right? You're so jammed in there. There's not that much air to breathe. I've been on a plane once in the winter, like traveling transatlantically. Everyone was coughing, like gnarly coughs, gross sniffles, all this kind of stuff. I'm sorry, but I'm not like getting on planes just to get sick anymore. I do wear a mask. Now I know that masks do not always protect you. I understand that they're not infallible. But the thing about it is, one, it makes me psychologically feel better that if someone's coughing next to me, at least I have a mask that's not getting those fumes completely straight up my nose and that there's some kind of protection and barrier to it. And then the second thing, even if that isn't necessarily, the case with masks and they totally don't work, but the second thing that a mask helps me with is that I won't touch my face. I won't use my dirty hands to touch my nose or my lips or my face or my chin. And so that also gives this kind of psychological reminder that like, hey, this is not the time to touch your face. Even after I take off the mask, it's not the time to touch my face. I make sure I take like a shower before I touch my face again after traveling. Your luggage is really dirty. Everything that goes through the x-ray machine has so much bacteria on it. Like, it's not the time to touch your face. And my mom sometimes complains that my dad gets sick more often than her because she notices him touching his face on planes. So the mask is one of the ways that I do that. Now again, I don't always do it. If it's a short flight or if I'm international, it's just like an hour or 2 flight, I won't necessarily always wear a mask. But if I'm getting on one of those 10-hour flights with sick people who could be sitting next to me and I hear them coughing and I hear them snarkling and snarling, you better bet. I have a really comfortable like brand that I use. It's not a big deal to me. I love to be anonymous anyway and kind of just like sleep on a plane. So that's just something that I do. You might not agree, but that's okay. Okay, my next tip for you, tip number 8, is to bring a quick dry towel wherever you go. If you're traveling outside of the US and if you go to a beach destination, your hotel or Airbnb might not necessarily have towels for you to use. I love traveling with my own towel because it means that even when I'm in between hotels that do offer a towel, which they usually don't, not for the beach, that's just not really common outside of the US, I know that I can go for a swim anywhere. Now, you know me, swimming is one of my favorite things ever. I love to swim in open bodies of water. I'm not as much of a pool swimmer. I don't mind a pool, but I love the ocean. I love the sea. Lakes are great too. I can't float as well in a lake, so it's kind of harder to swim, but I love that kind of stuff. And having a quick dry towel is something that makes you feel just so much more, ready to go. Like I can go anywhere. I can go swimming anywhere I want to. I'm traveling with it. I don't have to wait to see what amenities that the hotel has or something like that. It's saved my butt so many times. One time, and this is a long time ago, but one time I stayed in a hostel and they didn't give towels even for the bath. And I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do now? And I had a private room, so it wasn't like I was like bunking with a ton of people, but I had a private room. There was no towels for the bath. Thank God I had my quick dry towel, because otherwise what was I gonna use? The sheets of the bed, you know what I mean? Always travel with a quick dry towel. My next tip for you on just a travel hack that I swear by as a non-drinker is if you're traveling for a longer time, or if you want to feel more at home, choose an Airbnb with a washing machine. Now, there's so many Airbnbs all around the world these days, and if you don't want to overpack and you really want to have a lighter trip, especially if you're going for more than like 2 weeks, I don't think any suitcase can handle more than 2 weeks anyways, you need to be able to wash your clothes sometimes. And yeah, you could probably wash underwear in the shower, but when it comes to the bigger stuff, I would just much rather have an Airbnb with a washer. I made the mistake last year of booking some Airbnbs for a long trip without checking to see if they had washing machines, and none of them did. And so what happened is that I had to pack for a 3-week trip before I was able to wash any clothes. Now, I know you could always find those washing places around cities, but I don't know. I'm just not in that phase of my life anymore where I want to sit around in, some place to wash clothes in the middle of a public square. I'd rather just have an Airbnb that has a washer. Now, in most countries, most places, they won't have a dryer, but that's okay because they do have lines that you can use, and then you can hang up your clothes. So that's something I love. Another thing I love about an Airbnb, and I do both hotels and Airbnbs, but I try to do more Airbnbs probably because I like being able to not always eat out for every single dinner when I'm traveling. That can get old really fast, especially when you're trying to stick to a healthier diet or you're trying to save a little bit of money. And so being in an Airbnb or some kind of hotel that has a kitchenette is really, really helpful because for sure we can cook breakfast every day and really make it to our specifications. My husband and I eat a lot of vegetables for breakfast. So we can go to just any store, get a ton of vegetables, get eggs, get some butter, and then have breakfast versus having, breakfast somewhere out in town and it's just like pancakes or, you know what I mean? There's just like no fresh produce that comes with it. So we always eat breakfast at the place. And then most times we will still go out for dinner, but then it's nice to be able to have some nights where you have dinner at home. And it makes grocery shopping more fun when you go to a new location because then you can cook for yourself and find new foods that you want to try and stuff like that. But it always just gives you the flexibility and the option. So I love a kitchenette. I love being able to travel with one, but definitely a washer, especially if you want to pack light. There's these memes going around about how to tell if you're an American in Europe, and it's people who have those huge suitcases when they travel. Now, we usually travel for a long time in Europe, like 6-week trips. So yes, I'm guilty of having a normal suitcase. I can't just do it in a carry-on. But I think next year I'm really going to become more strategic about planning out my washers so that I can bring a lot less clothes and really make do with that. And then I obviously love eating as well at home, being able to cook, being able to control your diet a little bit more so that you're not just stuck with whatever is on the road. Now, my next tip is when you have to choose a hotel and you aren't able to get an Airbnb or anything like that, always choose a hotel that gives you free breakfast. Now, they're not always the best breakfast, especially in the States, but a lot of places have really nice gourmet breakfasts. And I will find on Expedia or Booking.com, I will find hotels that are literally the same exact price. One gives you a free breakfast, one doesn't. I'm always going to choose the free breakfast option. Trust me, the last thing you want to do when you're staying somewhere for like 5 days is wake up in the morning and figure out where you're going to eat breakfast each day. A lot of cultures don't do breakfast the same that way that the States does. A lot of places have like croissants and danishes and really sweet desserty type things for breakfast. And if that's not your thing and you don't want to have to eat a sweet Danish every single morning for the next 5 days, you definitely want to find a hotel that has a breakfast option. Now, they might not always have as many options, but I've found a lot of hotels, and I'll always look at the pictures to see what the breakfast looks like. Do they have at least some veggies? Even if it just means some baby tomatoes and some cut up peppers or something like that. And once they have just that, I'm golden. If they have even just fruit, it makes it a little bit better too. But they'll usually have eggs, they'll have breads, they'll have different meats and cheeses and stuff like that. And I love a really good hotel breakfast. It's just so worth it. Even when it's not included in the hotel, my husband and I have been really starting to eat at the hotel instead of going out and trying to find breakfast somewhere. Because, we're not like 20-year-olds anymore, and we're not going to just eat some random street food for breakfast. Like, we want a proper breakfast in the morning before we go out and before we go see the day. So Airbnb for your kitchenette, or if you're going to choose a hotel, definitely choose a place that you can get breakfast. And then that's what's great about that is that you can also have alcohol-free drinks. If you have an Airbnb, you can buy stuff at the store, you can store it in the fridge, you can make yourself a beautiful mocktail or a beautiful effervescent something, and it just feels really, really good to be able to store that kind of stuff somewhere. Okay, my next tip for you is another way to make travel so much easier for you. So, I can't believe we're in a day and age, but I remember when I was traveling back in the 2000s, and you definitely had no internet and no phone service anywhere you went, and you just had to get by on maps. And I think that was really cool. That was actually really, really fun. I almost wish we could get back to that feeling of nostalgia and that feeling in that era. But today we live on our phones. We need the GPS. We need to be able to, text and stuff like that and be able to look things up on our phones. And so I've noticed that a lot of people buy extra data when they're going somewhere abroad. And I just want to tell you this little secret, this little travel hack that I have. If you're in the United States, you've probably heard of T-Mobile. So T-Mobile has a international plan. Basically, it's the normal plan that you have for your phone, and it has an international feature that you can get free data in any country in the world. Now, I used to be on AT&T, and I was paying the same exact price for AT&T with no international data, with no international anything, texting or anything. I was paying the same exact price, and then I switched over to T-Mobile, and I got all of this international data for the same price. So it's not necessarily more expensive. So that's what me and my husband have, and basically T-Mobile gives us 5 gigs any country we go to. I've been to Bali, I've been to Singapore, I've been to Japan, I've been to China, I've been to, Brazil, I've been to all these countries all around the world, and it always works. It always works. It's amazing to me. I don't have to buy a SIM card. I don't have to do some weird data plan for this country that I might not use the whole thing and pay for it and then have a lot of it just be, wasted. I just have it. And so if that's something that's of interest to you, I would definitely check out T-Mobile. I think it's just a steal. I think more phone companies should be doing it because we're such an international people these days, and a lot of us travel and stuff like that, but I just can't imagine not being connected these days or only relying on Wi-Fi when you get it. And, people go into restaurants what's the Wi-Fi? No, you just want to have your internet covered. If you don't want to switch to T-Mobile, or if that's not an option for you, there are some really cool sites now too where you can buy, basically it's kind of like getting a PIN, but you don't have to, or a data SIM card, but you don't actually have to put it in your phone. It's just basically like a digital version. So there are places where you can buy the data now for that country, or you could even add it to your phone plan just for that month if you wanted to. But I love it. We pay the same that we've always paid for other phone companies, and we get that perk. So that's just one of my favorites. Okay, my last travel tip for you, the 12th tip I have for you on just something I swear by as a non-drinker, it goes back to the idea of how to make your trips and vacations as fulfilling as possible. And to really just recognize that you don't have to go to the wine country and the clubbing and the drinking every night kind of places. You can make your own trips that are really fulfilling for what you want to do in the season of your life where you're not really drinking anymore. And that to me is doing something physical. I used to drink at pools and literally not even go see the country I was in, which makes me really, really sad to think of at that times. Now I need to do physical activity when I'm in a different place. I love to either swim or hike. Maybe your thing is, bicycling, for example. I remember the first time I rented bicycles was only after I was alcohol free. It just wasn't something I was adventurous enough to do as a drinker. And so for me, just putting physical activity into each day is something I love to do. I'm not just talking about working out at the gym or something in the morning. I'm talking about like actually making your day based on walking, hiking, swimming, bicycling, and making that the main event of your day. And that can be really, really fun. I also think it's really cool to focus on all the things that normally drinkers wouldn't really focus on as much, or people who are just looking to like have the next drink or the next, place to, just relax by the pool and at the all-inclusive kind of stuff, is like, what's more exciting about that location than just sitting around? So for example, I love culture. I love going to archaeological sites. Like when we were in Tulum, Mexico, for example, or we were in actually Playa de Carmen this time, we went to this, really beautiful Mayan ruin. And that was so fun for us because like all these people are just sitting at the hotel every single day. And, that can be fun for like 2 or 3 days. And I love to swim, but at the same time, I like to get out. I want to go see more culture. And I think also as an alcohol-free person, making it about the food can be so fulfilling as well. So you want to find the thing that's going to be so fun for you to search out, whether it's architecture or culture or art or museums or hiking or biking or swimming, and make that the focal point of your trip. So I'm a foodie, and a lot of times, yes, food and wine or food and alcohol are tied together, but I still really believe that you can be a foodie and enjoy so much of what other countries and other places have to offer and make that the focus of your trip and have a lot of fun eating the pasta or the seafood or the ice cream or whatever that place is known as a specialty, and make it about that and really, really enjoy that instead of the drinks that would have been offered and so forth. So those are just the travel tips that I live by to make my travels smoother, more luxurious, easier, less of a hassle. I also have a few more little tips that I didn't include today. Like I usually keep my toiletries in my suitcase so I don't have to go find a toothbrush and stuff like that. So those are some easy things to do. I use packing cubes, I roll my clothes. So there's a lot more that goes into it, but I've been traveling for a long time. I traveled as a drinker. Now I'm traveling as a drinker for I traveled as a drinker for a long time. Now I've been traveling for many years as a non-drinker. There's so many ways to make it smoother, more accessible, easier, more fun. Do check out my other travel episodes on how to have incredible trips and vacations without alcohol, and do be sure to read that chapter in my book because it's a really, really good one on how to reframe and have the best trip ever. But it's also all about just nourishing yourself and taking care of yourself and having these little luxuries so that you're not just like scrapping it by. You can wash your clothes, you can eat breakfast, you can get to the lounge. Like all these little things really make travel less hard on your body and on your mind and a lot easier to enjoy. So I hope that was really helpful. I had a lot of fun thinking of these things because, they're just like second nature, and I've had to learn the hard way a lot of times with this kind of stuff. So I'm glad I could put this list together for you. If I missed something, let me know, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode.